I don't even know where to start with this, honestly. I've been sitting here for like an hour just staring at my screen, trying to figure out how to explain what happened. My therapist suggested I write it all down, and a friend mentioned Reddit might be cathartic, so here goes nothing. This is probably going to be long, and I'm sorry in advance, but I need to get this out. The short version? My best friend of 6 years deliberately sabotaged my career, my relationships, and almost my entire life because she was jealous. And I had absolutely no idea until 3 months ago. I'm still processing it. Some days I wake up and I'm just angry. Other days I'm sad. Most days I'm both, plus confused about how I missed all the signs that were apparently right in front of me the whole time. Background. And yeah, there's a lot. So, let me introduce you to the main character of this nightmare. We'll call her Sarah. Sarah and I met in 2017 at our first real jobs out of college. We were both 23, both working as junior copywriters at a mid-sized marketing agency in the city, and we clicked immediately. You know how sometimes you just meet someone and it feels like you've known them forever? That was us. We liked the same TV shows, had similar senses of humor, both came from small towns and were trying to make it in the big city. It felt like fate or whatever. We became inseparable pretty quickly. Lunch together every day, happy hours after work, weekend brunches, the whole thing. When my relationship with my college boyfriend ended in 2018, amicably, we just grew apart. Sarah was there with wine and rom-coms. When she had a health scare with her mom, I drove her to the airport at 4 a.m. and helped her deal with the stress. We were bridesmaids in each other's friends' weddings. We had a running group chat that was just the two of us sending memes back and forth. She was, hands down, my best friend. Here's the thing though, and I feel stupid admitting this now. Sarah was competitive. Not in an obvious, aggressive way, but in this subtle way that I always brushed off as her just being ambitious. She'd make little comments sometimes that felt slightly off, but I always gave her the benefit of the doubt. Like, if I got complimented on a project at work, she'd say something like, "Oh yeah, I helped with that concept early on, remember?" Even when she hadn't. Or if I mentioned a guy the first was interested in, she'd suddenly bring up how he'd actually asked her out first or how they'd matched on Bumble. Small things. Things that felt weird for maybe 2 seconds before I convinced myself I was being oversensitive. I ignored a lot of red flags because I genuinely loved her as a friend. And honestly, part of me felt like I should be grateful she wanted to be friends with me at all. Sarah was the kind of person who seemed to have everything figured out. She was confident, outgoing, always knew the right thing to say. I was more introverted, more anxious, definitely less sure of myself. So when she chose me as her best friend, it felt validating, you know. The career stuff starts. In 2019, things started getting weird at work, but I didn't connect it to Sarah at all. We'd both been promoted to mid-level copywriters, and I was starting to get assigned to some of the bigger client accounts. Our creative director, Tom, seemed to really like my work and started pulling me into more strategy meetings. It was exciting and terrifying. I felt like I was finally proving myself. Then stuff started going wrong. I'd send emails to clients and later discover they never received them. Or they'd receive completely different versions with errors in them. I'd prepare for meetings only to show up and find out the time had been changed, and everyone else got the memo except me. Projects I was supposed to be lead on would suddenly get reassigned to Sarah, with Tom apologetically explaining that the client had specifically requested her instead. I brought it up to Sarah one night over drinks. I feel like I'm going crazy, I told her. It's like someone has it out for me or something. She was so sympathetic. She held my hand across the table and told me that it wasn't personal, that the agency was just disorganized, that Tom probably had a lot on his plate. "You're doing great work," she assured me. "Everyone knows that. This is just growing pains." Meanwhile, she started getting all these opportunities. Lead on major campaigns. Invitations to pitch meetings. Her name on industry articles our agency published. I was happy for her. I really was. But I also felt increasingly invisible and incompetent. The worst incident happened in early 2020, right before COVID hit. I'd spent weeks working on a campaign proposal for a major potential client, a sustainable fashion brand that was exactly the kind of account I'd been dreaming of working with. It was the biggest pitch of my career so far. I had the presentation loaded on my laptop, my notes prepared, everything. The morning of the pitch, I got to the office to find Tom waiting for me, looking uncomfortable as hell. The client had called that morning to cancel, he said. Apparently, they'd received an email from my address the night before that was inappropriate. He showed me the email chain on his phone. Someone had sent a message from my company email account at 11:47 p.m., making borderline offensive comments about the client's products and suggesting they were overpriced, hippie nonsense. The tone was unprofessional and snarky, nothing like how I actually write. But it came from my email. I was mortified. I tried to explain that I hadn't sent it, that I'd been home watching Netflix with my roommate at that time, that someone must have accessed my account. But I could see Tom didn't fully believe me. Why would he? It came from my email. I couldn't prove someone else had sent it. Sarah was shocked, and so sorry this happened. She suggested maybe I'd been hacked, or maybe I'd had too much wine and sent it without remembering. I hadn't even been drinking that night, but the suggestion planted a seed of doubt that maybe I was somehow losing it. The client never rescheduled. The pitch went to another team, led by Sarah. And I started getting a reputation as someone who was talented but unpredictable. The relationship sabotage. Around the same time all this work stuff was happening, I met someone. We'll call him Alex. I met Alex through a friend of a friend at a birthday party in February 2020, right before everything shut down. He was funny, smart, worked in architecture, and we had this immediate chemistry. For the first time in a while, I felt genuinely excited about someone. I told Sarah about him the next day, gushing like a teenager. She seemed happy for me, asked all the right questions, wanted to see pictures. We'd just started texting regularly, and I was hoping we'd go on a first date soon. Then COVID hit and everything got complicated, but Alex and I kept talking. Hours-long phone calls, FaceTime dates, watching movies, together, over video chat. It was actually kind of romantic in a weird pandemic way. By summer 2020, we were officially together, even though we'd only seen each other in person a handful of times due to lockdown. Sarah was fully invested in my relationship, or so I thought. She wanted to hear everything, would give me advice on texts to send him, helped me plan cute surprises. When we were finally able to do small outdoor gatherings, she met Alex a few times and they seemed to get along great. But then Alex started acting weird. He'd be slightly distant sometimes, or bring up things I'd supposedly said that I had absolutely no memory of saying. Once he mentioned that he didn't realize I'd thought about moving to California, which was news to me. I'd never mentioned wanting to move anywhere. Another time he seemed hurt that I'd told Sarah I was not sure about long-term compatibility with him, which I'd never said. I was very sure about long-term compatibility. I was falling in love with him. Sarah must have misunderstood, he'd say when I denied saying these things. Or, maybe you mentioned it casually and forgot? It caused friction. Not huge fights, but this ongoing undercurrent of miscommunication and doubt. I felt like I was constantly clarifying things I'd supposedly said but hadn't, and I could tell Alex was getting frustrated with the inconsistencies. We broke up in December 2020, right before the holidays. He said he cared about me but felt like we weren't on the same page about what we wanted, and he'd gotten the impression I was keeping my options open, and wasn't as invested as he was. I was devastated. I had been invested. I'd been planning to tell him I loved him over Christmas. Sarah was there with ice cream and tissues, telling me he was an idiot, that I deserved better, that it was his loss. I cried on her couch for hours while she played with my hair and let me vent. She was the best friend I could have asked for in that moment. More career disasters. Work continued to be a disaster. By 2021, I'd been passed over for a senior writer promotion twice, once for Sarah, and once for someone who'd started after me. My performance reviews were always mixed. I'd get praised for creativity but criticized for communication issues and reliability concerns. Every time I tried to defend myself or point out specific instances where things had gone wrong through no fault of my own, I had no evidence. It was always my word against weird coincidences. I started having panic attacks. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. convinced I'd forgotten a deadline or sent a terrible email I didn't remember sending. I started screenshotting everything I sent, keeping obsessive records of meetings and conversations. My therapist suggested I might be experiencing burnout and imposter syndrome. Sarah suggested maybe the agency just wasn't the right fit for me. Maybe I should look elsewhere, take a break, consider whether this career was really what I wanted. You've always been so stressed, she'd say. I worry about you. The weird thing was, she kept succeeding. By late 2021, she was promoted to senior copywriter and was leading major accounts. She was flourishing while I felt like I was drowning, and I couldn't figure out what I was doing wrong. I tried dating again a few times. Met a guy named Marcus through Hinge in spring 2021. We went on 3 dates. I thought things were going well, and then he ghosted me. Later, much later, I found out why. More on that in a bit. Met someone else at a friend's wedding in October 2021. We texted for 2 weeks, had one great date, and then he suddenly told me a mutual friend had warned him I was a lot, and had a reputation for drama. I didn't know who the mutual friend was. He wouldn't say. I started wondering if something was wrong with me. Was I actually unreliable? Was I dramatic? Was I creating problems and somehow not seeing it? Sarah would reassure me that I was amazing, that these guys didn't deserve me, that the agency was toxic and bringing out the worst in the situation. You're not the problem, she'd insist. You're just having a run of bad luck. The roommate situation. In early 2022, my roommate at the time, we'll call her Jessica, decided to move in with her boyfriend. I needed to find someone to take over her half of the lease, and I was stressed about it because rent in our city is insane. Sarah immediately volunteered. She was living in a studio that she didn't love anyway, and wouldn't it be fun to live together? We already spent so much time together, it made sense. I was thrilled. Having my best friend as my roommate felt like the one thing going right in my life. The first few months were great. We'd cook together, have movie nights, the works. It felt like an extended sleepover with your best friend. But then I started noticing small things. My stuff would go missing. Nothing major, just like a favorite necklace, or a book I'd been reading, or that specific lipstick I loved. They'd usually turn up eventually in weird places, and Sarah would joke that I was getting absent-minded. Once, a package that was supposed to be delivered to me showed up already opened, and Sarah said it had been left in the hallway like that. What a shame, someone must have rifled through it. More concerning were the times I'd come home to find Sarah on my laptop. She'd say her computer was updating, or she needed to check something quickly and hers was dead. She knew my password because we'd shared it casually once when I needed her to check an email for me while I was in a meeting. I thought nothing of it. We were best friends. We trusted each other. I started having issues with my bank account. Weird small charges that I didn't recognize but that seemed plausible enough that I figured maybe I'd forgotten about them. My credit card information got stolen at one point, and I had to cancel everything and get new cards. The bank suggested my information might have been compromised at a restaurant or store, but it was a whole headache. Through all of this, I was applying for new jobs. I'd been at the agency for 5 years at this point, and it was clear I wasn't going to advance there. I got a few interviews at other places, and they seemed to go well, but then I'd never hear back. Or I'd hear back that they'd decided to go with someone whose references were stronger, or who had fewer question marks about their work history. My references were Tom, my creative director, who'd grown increasingly distant with me, and Sarah, who was supposedly putting in good words for me. I couldn't figure out what was happening. The new job. Finally, in summer 2022, I got a job offer at a different agency. Smaller, but with a better culture supposedly, and a senior copywriter title. I was so relieved I actually cried when they called. This was my fresh start. I could leave behind all the weirdness of the past few years and prove myself somewhere new. I put in my notice at the old agency. Tom seemed almost relieved, which stung, but whatever. Sarah took me out for celebratory drinks and told me how proud she was. How this was going to be amazing for me. I started the new job in August 2022, and for a little while, things seemed better. My new boss, Lauren, was supportive and communicative. The team was smaller but collaborative. I felt like I could breathe for the first time in years. But then, slowly, the same patterns started emerging. Miscommunications. Missing emails. A client complaint about something I'd supposedly said on a call that I definitely hadn't said. Or at least, not in the way they'd interpreted it. Small stuff at first, but it was like watching the same movie play out again. I started having actual breakdowns. I'd come home and just sob, completely overwhelmed and confused. Sarah would comfort me, but she also started suggesting more seriously that maybe I needed to consider that I might be the common denominator. I love you, she'd say, but have you thought about whether there might be something? I don't know, something you're doing unconsciously that's causing these patterns? Maybe talk to your therapist about it? I did talk to my therapist about it. A lot. We explored whether I might have ADHD, I don't. Whether I might be self-sabotaging due to low self-esteem. Maybe. Whether I might have some kind of dissociative thing happening where I was doing things I didn't remember. Seemed unlikely, but I was desperate for explanations. The worst part was, I started believing that maybe I was the problem. Maybe I was terrible at my job and just couldn't see it. Maybe I was a difficult person and didn't realize it. Maybe I was losing my grip on reality. The beginning of the end. Things came to a head in March of this year, 2023. I'd been at the new agency for about 7 months, and despite my efforts, I could feel it going south. Lauren had started giving me smaller projects, treating me more cautiously. I overheard someone in the office make a comment about me being high maintenance, and it made me want to throw up. Then I met someone new. We'll call him Daniel. I met Daniel at a professional networking event. He worked in brand strategy at a different company. We hit it off immediately, exchanged numbers, and started talking. For the first time since Alex, I felt genuinely hopeful about a potential relationship. I was hesitant to tell Sarah at first, which should have been a red flag in itself. I realized I'd been increasingly careful about what I shared with her about my dating life, some self-protective instinct I hadn't fully acknowledged. But she was my best friend and roommate. I couldn't exactly hide that I was seeing someone. When I finally told her about Daniel after our third date, her reaction was off. She smiled and said all the right things, but something in her eyes was weird. Hard, maybe? It was just for a second, then she was back to normal, asking questions and acting excited for me. Daniel and I started seeing each other regularly. He was kind, stable, had his shit together. We took things slow, which felt right. I was happy, genuinely happy, for the first time in a long while. Then, about a month into us dating, Daniel brought up something weird. We were having dinner at his place, and he said, "Hey, so this is kind of awkward, but your roommate reached out to me on LinkedIn." My stomach dropped. What? Yeah, Sarah? She sent me a connection request and then messaged me. She said she wanted to meet for coffee to chat about you, because she was concerned about some stuff and thought I should know, as someone who was dating you. I felt like I was going to be sick. What did you say? I told her that seemed inappropriate and that if she had concerns, she should talk to you directly. Then I didn't respond to her follow-ups. He paused. Is everything okay? She made it sound like there was something serious I should know about your mental health or something. I made some excuse about Sarah being overprotective, laughed it off, but inside I was freaking out. When I got home that night, Sarah was in the living room watching TV. I confronted her about messaging Daniel. She seemed completely unfazed. I was just trying to look out for you, she said. You've been through so much, and I didn't want you to get hurt again. I thought he should know what he was getting into. How stressed you've been, the work stuff, everything. That's not your place, I said, my voice shaking. That's my personal life. You don't get to go behind my back to someone I'm dating. She got defensive then, turned it around on me, said I was being paranoid and ungrateful, that she was just trying to be a good friend. We had our first real fight in 6 years of friendship. I ended up sleeping at Daniel's that night because I couldn't stand to be in the apartment with her. That fight cracked something open though. I started thinking about all the weird things that had happened over the years. The patterns, the timing. I started adding things up in my head and not liking what I was seeing. The discovery. The next week, I did something I'm not entirely proud of, but I'm also not sorry about it. Sarah left her laptop open on the kitchen counter when she ran out to grab lunch. I don't know what possessed me, maybe gut instinct, maybe paranoia, maybe both, but I looked at it. Her email was open, and I saw my name in one of the draft folders. I clicked on it. My hands were shaking. It was a draft email to my current boss, Lauren. Dated from 2 weeks earlier but never sent. The gist of it was expressing concern about my erratic behavior and reliability issues, mentioning specific projects I'd supposedly mishandled. I hadn't, and suggesting that as someone who'd worked closely with me for years, she felt obligated to share these concerns for the good of the agency. She hadn't sent it. It was just sitting there in drafts. Maybe she was working up the courage. Maybe she was waiting for the right time. I don't know. I kept digging. I know, invasion of privacy, terrible breach of trust, all of that. But fuck it, I was past caring about social niceties at that point. I found her sent folder. Months and months of emails I'd never known about. Emails to Tom at our old agency from my email address. She'd had my password from when we worked together. Emails to guys I'd dated, pretending to be mutual friends, warning them off. An email to Marcus, the guy from Hinge, sent from a burner account, with screenshots of fake text messages supposedly from me saying horrible things about him. The messages were completely fabricated, but they were convincing. She'd mimicked my texting style perfectly. There were messages to Lauren and other people at my current job. Messages to references I'd listed for job applications. She'd been systematically contacting anyone I needed to make a good impression on and poisoning the well. I found a document that was like a diary, almost. Notes about our friendship, about me. Things like, jealous of her ease with people, need to work on that, and, she's getting too confident again, time to remind her of her place. There were detailed accounts of times she deliberately sabotaged me, written out like they were strategic plans. One entry, dated from when I first met Alex, said, "Can't let her have this one. She's been too happy lately. Need to create some distance." Another, from around the time I started my current job. New job means I need to establish presence there early. Already reached out to her boss under the guise of being a concerned former colleague. It was systematic. It was intentional. It was years and years of calculated sabotage. I sat there at the kitchen counter, reading through everything, feeling like my entire reality was reshaping itself. Every bad thing that had happened to me in the past 3 years suddenly had an explanation. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't incompetent. I wasn't cursed with bad luck. My best friend had been deliberately destroying my life. I took photos of everything on my phone. Screenshots of emails, photos of the diary document, all of it. I probably spent 2 hours going through her laptop, documenting everything I could find. By the time I was done, I had hundreds of photos. When Sarah came back from lunch, I was sitting on the couch, trying to look normal. I don't think I pulled it off. She asked if I was okay, and I said I had a headache. She made sympathetic noises and offered to make me tea. I felt like I was looking at a stranger. The confrontation. I didn't confront her right away. I needed time to process, to figure out what to do. I called in sick to work the next day and stayed at Daniel's, showing him everything I'd found. He was horrified. He wanted me to go to the police, but I wasn't sure any of it was technically illegal, unethical as hell, definitely, but illegal? I didn't know. I called a few other friends, people I trusted outside of my friendship with Sarah. I found out some interesting things. Remember how I mentioned that guy at my wedding who'd told me someone warned him I was dramatic? That friend helped me figure out who the mutual friend was. It was Sarah. She'd created a fake social media profile, posed as someone we both knew from college, and messaged him warnings about me. I called Alex, my ex from 2020. We hadn't talked in over 2 years. I apologized for calling out of the blue and asked him some careful questions about what Sarah had told him about me during our relationship. He was honest with me, She'd regularly told him I'd said things I hadn't, that I was conflicted about the relationship, that I'd been talking to other guys. She'd shown him text screenshots that I now realized must have been fabricated. I thought you were playing games, he told me. I didn't realize Sarah was lying. God, I'm sorry. Everything clicked into place. Every relationship that had failed, every job opportunity that had evaporated, every moment I'd questioned my own sanity, it all traced back to her. I finally confronted Sarah 4 days after I'd found everything on her laptop. I'd moved most of my important stuff to Daniel's place without her noticing, just taking a bag or two each day. I'd talked to a lawyer friend who helped me understand my options, limited, but present. I'd prepared myself as much as I could. She came home from work on a Friday evening, and I was sitting in the living room with my laptop open. Photos pulled up on the screen. Hey, she said, dropping her bag. What's up? We need to talk. She must have seen something in my face because her expression changed. She looked wary. Okay. I turned the laptop around to show her one of the screenshots from her email. I want to give you a chance to explain this. I watched her face go through several emotions. Shock, panic, calculation. Then she settled on defensive anger. You went through my personal computer? What the fuck? That's your response? That's what you're leading with right now? You invaded my privacy. You had no right. You've been sabotaging me for 3 years. I was yelling now. I couldn't help it. You've been pretending to be my friend while systematically destroying my career, my relationships, my entire fucking life. She stared at me. For a moment, I thought she might deny it. Then something shifted in her expression, something ugly and cold that I'd never seen before. You don't get it, she said flatly. Then explain it to me. She laughed, this bitter sound. Everything always came so easy to you. Do you even realize that? You'd just walk into rooms and people would like you. You'd write something and everyone would think it was brilliant. Guys would fall all over themselves for you. And you didn't even appreciate it. You were always so fucking insecure, so anxious, and it was like you had everything I wanted and you didn't even enjoy it. I just stared at her, speechless. I worked twice as hard as you at the agency, she continued, her voice getting louder. I stayed late, I networked, I did everything right. And you'd just casually turn in some project and Tom would lose his mind over how creative you were. Do you know how that felt? Do you know what it's like to watch someone succeed without even trying while you're breaking your back to get half the recognition? So you decided to ruin my life? I decided to level the playing field. She said it like it was reasonable. And honestly, you should be thanking me. All that adversity made you stronger, right? Your therapist probably told you that. I felt dizzy. This person in front of me, saying these things with such conviction. I didn't know her. Maybe I never had. You're fucking insane, I said. I'm practical. And honestly, you made it easy. You were so trusting, so eager to believe the best in everyone. So desperate for my approval. She smiled, and it was chilling. You knew something was off. I could tell sometimes that you suspected, but you always talked yourself out of it because you couldn't imagine that I'd do something like that. Because we were best friends. She said, best friends, mockingly, with air quotes. I stood up, grabbing my laptop. I'm leaving. I'm moving out. And I'm sending all of this to HR at both agencies, to everyone you contacted about me, to everyone who deserves to know what you did. For the first time, she looked scared. You can't. Watch me. And if you try to stop me or contact me in any way, I'm going to the police. I've already talked to a lawyer. What you did might not all be technically illegal, but some of it probably is. The fake social media profiles, the identity fraud, accessing my email accounts. We'll find out. I walked out. She didn't try to stop me. The aftermath. The next few weeks were a blur. I did exactly what I said I would. I compiled everything I'd found and sent detailed reports to HR at both agencies, along with the relevant evidence. I contacted the guys she'd sabotaged my relationships with and explained what had happened. I told my current boss, Lauren, everything, showing her the draft email Sarah had written and all the previous messages she'd sent. The response was mixed, honestly. Some people were immediately supportive and horrified. Lauren was amazing. She was shocked and angry on my behalf, and she immediately went to bat for me with the company's leadership. Tom, my old boss, was harder to read. He seemed uncomfortable, maybe embarrassed that he'd believed Sarah's manipulations. He apologized via email but kept it brief. Sarah was fired from our old agency within 2 weeks. Turns out, once people started looking into it, they found evidence of her doing similar things to other colleagues, just not as extensively as she'd done to me. She'd been creating problems between people, spreading rumors, positioning herself as the trustworthy one while everyone else seemed dramatic or difficult. Some people didn't believe me, or didn't want to believe me. A few mutual acquaintances suggested I was exaggerating or that maybe it was a misunderstanding. One former colleague told me I was being vindictive, and that I should have just quietly ended the friendship. That hurt, not gonna lie. The hardest part was realizing how much time I'd lost. 3 years of my life where I'd been constantly doubting myself, thinking I was the problem, struggling with anxiety and panic attacks that she had deliberately caused. 3 years of career setbacks that I was now trying to recover from. Relationships that had ended because of her interference. Alex and I tried talking again, but too much time had passed. We were different people now. We're friendly, but that's it. I also had to deal with the financial stuff. Turned out those weird charges on my accounts? Yeah, Sarah had my card information and had been making small purchases that I'd written off as my own forgetfulness. Not enough to be obvious, just enough to be annoying. My lawyer said I could pursue it, but it would be more trouble than it was worth, and honestly, I just wanted to be done with her. The fake social media profiles were harder to track, but once I started looking, I found several. She'd been maintaining an entire alternate online presence, pretending to be people who knew me, spreading information about me that ranged from misleading to completely false. Getting those profiles taken down was a nightmare of reporting and documentation. Moving forward, it's been 3 months since everything blew up. I moved in with Daniel, which feels fast, but honestly, we'd been forced to get serious pretty quickly given the circumstances. So far, it's been good. He's been incredibly patient with me through all of this, even when I've been paranoid or difficult. Work has gotten better. Once Lauren understood what had been happening, she gave me the benefit of the doubt on a lot of the issues that had come up. I'm slowly rebuilding my reputation and proving myself. It's exhausting having to work twice as hard to undo damage that someone else caused, but I'm doing it. I'm in therapy twice a week now. My therapist has been helping me work through the betrayal trauma. Apparently that's a thing, and rebuild my sense of trust in my own judgment. Some days are better than others. I still sometimes catch myself second-guessing everything I do or say, waiting for the other shoe to drop. I've had to reevaluate all my friendships. Not because I don't trust anyone, but because I need to understand why I ignored so many red flags with Sarah. What made me so willing to doubt myself instead of her? Why did I accept her explanations when things didn't add up? I'm learning to trust my instincts better, to not dismiss my own perceptions just because someone else tells me I'm wrong. The weirdest thing is the grief. I know Sarah was a terrible person who did terrible things to me, but I still sometimes miss the friendship I thought we had. I miss the person I thought she was. My therapist says that's normal. I'm mourning the loss of the relationship and the loss of who I believed her to be, even though that person never really existed. Sarah tried to contact me a few times in the first month. Emails, texts, even showing up at my workplace once. I'd already sent her a cease and desist letter through my lawyer, so I documented everything but didn't respond. After the workplace incident, I filed for a restraining order. The hearing is next month. I don't know if I'll get it. She hasn't technically threatened me, but my lawyer thinks we have a decent shot given the documented harassment and previous behavior. I haven't heard from her in about 6 weeks now. I don't know what she's doing, where she's working, how she's explaining what happened to people who ask. Part of me wants to know, part of me knows it's better that I don't. Current status and reflections. I'm doing okay, I think. Some days are really hard. I'm still angry a lot, angry about the time I lost, the opportunities that were taken from me, the relationships that ended because of her interference. I'm angry that she made me doubt my own sanity. I'm angry that she cost me years of my career trajectory, and I'm now playing catch-up. But I'm also learning to give myself grace. I didn't deserve what happened to me. I wasn't stupid for trusting someone who claimed to be my best friend. The red flags I missed weren't obvious. They were small things that she deliberately kept subtle enough that I'd question myself instead of her. That was the whole strategy. My relationships with other people have actually deepened through this. My friends who believed me and supported me have proven to be genuinely solid people. Daniel has been incredible. My family, despite being far away, has been checking in regularly. I'm learning what real friendship and support look like, which is making it clearer in hindsight just how toxic my dynamic with Sarah was. I've started writing again, not just for work. Creative writing, personal essays, even some poetry. It's terrible but therapeutic. I'm rediscovering parts of myself that got buried under years of self-doubt and anxiety. Turns out, when you're not constantly being sabotaged, you can actually accomplish things and feel good about them. Who knew? My career is stabilizing. I got assigned to a major project last month, a campaign for a tech startup that's exactly the kind of creative, high-profile work I've been wanting to do. I'm terrified I'll mess it up, but I'm also excited. Lauren has been giving me more responsibility and seems to genuinely trust me now that she understands the context of what happened before. I'm trying to figure out if I want to pursue any legal action against Sarah beyond the restraining order. My lawyer says I might have a case for defamation or intentional infliction of emotional distress, but lawsuits are expensive and time-consuming, and I don't know if I want to keep her in my life even in that capacity. Part of me wants her to face real consequences. Part of me just wants to move on and never think about her again. The lessons I'm still learning. If there's anything I want people to take from this mess, it's this. Trust your instincts. If something